Most people look at linen and see expensive fabric reserved for summer vacation. Medieval peasants looked at the same material and saw their survival. They understood something about linen that kept them warm in winter, cool in summer, and protected them from infections that killed half the children in any given village. We're talking about knowledge that sustained entire civilizations for over 8,000 years. Knowledge that's been almost completely erased in just 2 generations. Today, we're diving into the science of why medieval linen worked and why your cotton and polyester don't. Our story starts in 1345, right when the bubonic plague was at its worst. Back then, the doctors noticed something strange. Linen bandages kept wounds clean, while wool bandages turned small cuts into deadly infections. Guy de Chauliac, the 14th century physician, recommended linen compresses for treating plague buboes because the fabric performed better than other materials available. He couldn't explain why. The germ theory of disease wouldn't be discovered for another 500 years, but medieval people already knew from generations of experience that linen reduced skin infections and that people who wore it close to their skin simply got sick less often. They didn't need to understand the mechanism, they just needed to observe what worked. And what worked was flax. The same plant that gave them rope for their ships, oil for their lamps, and seeds for their livestock also gave them the fabric that became their first line of defense against a world that could kill you from a simple scratch. For 3,000 years, from ancient Egypt through the medieval period and into the early 20th century, linen dominated textile production across Europe. Flax fibers used for textile production date back over 30,000 years, with evidence found in caves in the Republic of Georgia. Organized linen weaving began in ancient Egypt around 5000 BCE. By the 13th century, Flanders had become the center of European linen production, with cities like Ghent, Bruges, and Ypres exporting high-quality linen across the continent. It was fundamental infrastructure rather than a fashion trend. Every peasant household grew flax in small dedicated plots, typically half an acre to 2 acres, alongside food crops. Every woman knew how to process it. The skills passed from mother to daughter as automatically as reading passes today. Records from medieval England prove flax was huge business. Families grew it for their own clothes and to sell for money. It was bedding, bandages, towels, undergarments, sails, sacks for grain storage, and thread for sewing everything else together. Then came the year 1793, which would change the fate of linen forever. Eli Whitney patented the cotton gin. That single machine could process more cotton in a day than 50 workers could process by hand. Cotton cultivation exploded. It was cheaper to grow, faster to process, and most importantly for the factory owners, it could be produced at massive scale using enslaved labor in the American South. By 1850, cotton had overtaken linen as the dominant fiber in Europe and North America. British cotton textile production increased 40-fold between 1785 and 1850, while linen production stagnated. By the 1950s, flax production in England had virtually disappeared. Ireland remained the last major linen producer in the British Isles, though production there also collapsed from 75,000 workers in 1900 to fewer than 10,000 by 1970. We replaced a fabric that had sustained human civilization for millennia with something cheaper and faster. And then, starting in the 1960s, we replaced cotton with something even cheaper. Petroleum-based synthetic fabrics, polyester, nylon, acrylic. Today, roughly 63% of all clothing produced globally contains plastic fibers. You're probably wearing some right now. That switch cost us 3 things medieval people had that we lost. The first one is something you can feel on your skin in the next 10 seconds. The second affects how you sleep tonight. The third one is in your bloodstream right now, whether you know it or not. Let's start with the properties linen had that we're only now beginning to understand through modern materials science. Linen fibers are hollow inside, like tiny straws. This structure stops bacteria from growing. Cotton and polyester can't do this. Laboratory studies prove linen stops bacterial growth better than any other fabric. This is why medieval peasants could wear the same linen shirt for weeks during 12-hour harvest days without it reeking, while your polyester gym clothes smell disgusting after 20 minutes. But here's what matters for anyone dealing with hot flashes, night sweats, or just trying to sleep through a summer night without waking up drenched. Linen can absorb up to 20% of its weight in moisture before it even feels damp to the touch. Cotton manages about 7 to 8%. Polyester? Less than 1%. That's why your synthetic workout clothes feel soaked after 20 minutes of light exercise. The fabric can't absorb what your body is producing. It just sits on your skin. Now let's talk about what medieval people understood about temperature regulation. This is where the real genius of linen becomes clear. You've probably heard that linen is a cool summer fabric. That's true, but it's only half the story. Medieval peasants wore linen year-round, in winter, in freezing temperatures. Not because they couldn't afford wool. Wool was actually cheaper than linen in most regions. They wore linen as a base layer because they understood something about thermal regulation that we desperately need to remember. This is the part that sounds impossible until you try it yourself. Medieval soldiers in freezing temperatures stayed warmer with linen under their armor than modern hikers do with high-tech base layers. The reason comes down to one simple mistake almost everyone makes in cold weather. Your body is always making heat and losing heat. It needs to stay balanced, not too hot, not too cold. When you wear wool directly against your skin in winter, you do stay warm. But the moment you move, the moment you start working, you sweat. And wool absorbs that moisture slowly and releases it even more slowly. So you end up with damp fabric pressed against your skin, which dramatically increases heat loss. According to outdoor safety research, wet fabric conducts heat away from your body up to 25 times faster than dry fabric. This is how people catch pneumonia. This is how you go from warm to dangerously cold in the span of an hour. Medieval people solved this with a simple system: linen next to the skin, wool on top. The linen wicks moisture away from the body immediately, keeping skin dry. The wool provided insulation. This combination kept peasants working outdoors in January, kept soldiers marching through winter campaigns, and kept sailors alive on North Atlantic fishing expeditions, where falling into freezing water meant death in minutes and staying dry meant the difference between life and death. Medieval military accounts record linen shirts among standard issue clothing for soldiers. Archers and men-at-arms needed base layers that would wick sweat during exertion while providing warmth when inactive. An archer drawing a 150-pound bow generates tremendous body heat and sweat. That moisture had to be managed, or the soldier became a liability. The linen shirt under a wool tunic created a microclimate that kept fighting men functional in conditions that would incapacitate someone wearing modern layering systems. Here's the test you can do right now if you have any linen in your house. Take a linen towel or shirt and hold it against your face. Notice the texture. It feels slightly rough, almost scratchy compared to cotton. That roughness is the fiber structure working. Now breathe warm, moist air through it. The fabric doesn't trap that moisture, it pulls it through. You can feel the cooling effect immediately. That's the same mechanism that kept medieval peasants comfortable during harvest, when they'd be working in fields under August sun from sunrise to sunset. Cotton feels softer, more comfortable initially, but run the same breathing test. The moisture stays put. It saturates the fabric. This is why cotton is dangerous in cold weather hiking. Every outdoor survival guide tells you the same thing: cotton kills. But they rarely mention what people used before cotton became the standard. They used linen. Although it's true that cotton and polyester are cheaper and easier to produce, they came with a price. And once you understand the differences in production, you will never want to get a cotton shirt again. The processing of flax into linen was one of the most labor-intensive crafts in medieval Europe. But that intensity came with quality. Flax plants were pulled from the ground by hand, not cut, because the full length of the stem produced the longest, strongest fibers. Then came retting. The harvested flax was submerged in water for 5 to 7 days, allowing naturally occurring bacteria to break down the pectin that held the fiber bundles together. The smell was epic. Entire villages were scared of the retting season because of the horrible smell. It separated the fibers without damaging them. After retting, the flax was dried, then beaten to break up the woody core. This process, called breaking and scutching, removed everything except the pure flax fiber. What remained was then combed through progressively finer hackles, metal combs that straightened the fibers and removed any remaining debris. Only then could it be spun into thread. A skilled spinner could produce about 1/2 pound of linen thread per day. For reference, that's enough thread to weave roughly 1 square foot of fabric. Compare that to modern polyester production. Petroleum is refined into polymers, melted, extruded through tiny holes, cooled, stretched, and wound onto spools at rates exceeding 10,000 pounds per hour in a single factory. The efficiency gain is staggering. The quality loss is equally staggering. Household inventories from late medieval Europe show that linen was valuable enough to be listed in wills and estate records, passed down through generations as durable household goods. High-quality linen's longevity made it an investment rather than a disposable item. Museum collections contain linen altar cloths from the 13th century that show minimal wear despite 500 years of handling. Modern clothing is designed to fail. Industry studies show that inexpensive synthetic garments lose shape, pill, and degrade significantly within their first year of regular use. Fast fashion depends on rapid replacement cycles. Medieval linen represented the opposite philosophy. Make it once. Make it well. Use it for decades. Here's why it matters to you today. According to research on consumer behavior, Americans purchased approximately 64 garments per year by 2016, compared to fewer than 25 items annually in 1960. We're not buying more clothes because we need them. We're buying more clothes because they fall apart, and because they're so cheap that replacement becomes easier than repair. A polyester shirt at a big box store costs $12. A comparable linen shirt costs $60 to $80. The price difference seems obvious, but the polyester shirt lasts 1 year. The linen shirt lasts 10 to 15 years. The actual cost per year of wear is lower for linen. We just don't calculate that way anymore. Meanwhile, those synthetic clothes are shedding microplastic fibers every single time you wash them. Research published in Environmental Science and Technology found that a single load of synthetic clothing can release over 700,000 microscopic plastic fibers into wastewater. Those fibers are too small for filtration systems to catch. They end up in rivers, oceans, and eventually in the food chain. Research published in 2022 detected microplastic particles in human blood for the first time. A separate study in 2020 found microplastics in human placentas. The long-term health effects remain under investigation. But we do know that medieval people wearing linen weren't contaminating themselves or their environment with plastic particles every time they got dressed. Now, before you think this means you need to spend thousands replacing your entire wardrobe, I'm going to show you the exact 3 steps that give you 80% of the benefits for less than $300. Start with what touches your skin all day. Your underwear, your undershirt. That's where linen matters most. You can find linen undershirts from European manufacturers, particularly Irish, Belgian, and Lithuanian companies that maintain traditional linen production through the synthetic revolution. Expect to pay $40 to $70 for a good undershirt. That sounds expensive until you realize you'll wear it for 10 years. And unlike cotton or synthetic base layers, linen improves with washing. The fibers soften while maintaining their structure. A linen shirt after 50 washes is more comfortable than when it was new. Second step, bedding. You spend a third of your life in bed. Sleeping on fabric that pulls moisture away from your body improves sleep quality dramatically. Studies on sleep quality and bedding materials have shown that temperature regulation is critical to sleep quality, particularly for people experiencing night sweats or hot flashes during perimenopause and menopause. Linen sheets maintain a more stable microclimate than cotton, which matters more than thread count or fabric softness. Yes, linen sheets cost more upfront. A queen set runs between $200 and $400, but they last 20 to 30 years with proper care. Cotton sheets need replacement every 2 to 4 years. The math is straightforward. Third step, summer clothing. This is where linen's reputation as a hot weather fabric is completely accurate. A loose linen shirt in summer heat creates airflow between the fabric and your skin while pulling sweat away. The effect is cooling without air conditioning. Desert guides in North Africa and the Middle East have used this for centuries. Modern hikers in hot climates are rediscovering the same principle. Here's what to look for when buying linen. First, check the label. Real linen is 100% flax fiber, no blends. Linen cotton blends are cheaper, but lose most of the benefits. The moisture wicking capability drops. The durability decreases. If it says linen blend, keep looking. Second, weight matters. Summer linen should be lightweight, around 4 to 5 ounces per square yard. Winter base layers need medium weight, 6 to 8 ounces per square yard. Heavy linen, over 9 ounces per square yard, is for upholstery and bags, not clothing. Third, country of origin tells you about processing quality. Ireland, Belgium, Lithuania, and France maintained high standards throughout the 20th century, when most production moved to lower quality mass manufacturing. Linen from these regions costs more because the processing standards are higher. Expect real linen to feel rough at first. It shouldn't be soft like cotton. That roughness is the fiber structure. That rough texture is how you know it's working. Medieval peasants didn't care about softness. They cared about function. The fabric kept them alive. That was the standard. Once people buy their first linen, they often make crucial mistakes that ruin it within the first month. Follow these 2 simple rules to avoid them. First rule, wash in cold or warm water, never hot. Hot water doesn't hurt the flax fibers, but it sets stains permanently. Medieval people washed linen in cold streams and rivers. Modern washing machines on gentle cycle with cool water work fine. Second rule, don't use fabric softener, ever. Fabric softener coats the fibers and destroys their moisture wicking capability. Medieval linen never saw fabric softener and lasted for generations. Your linen doesn't need it either. Third rule, line dry when possible. Linen dries quickly. Hanging it outside in sun and air naturally sanitizes the fabric and prevents any musty smell. If you must use a dryer, use low heat and remove the items while still slightly damp. Over-drying in high heat weakens the fibers gradually. Fourth rule, embrace wrinkles. Linen wrinkles. It always has. Medieval people wore wrinkled linen. Wrinkles don't affect function. If you absolutely must iron, do it while the fabric is still damp, using medium heat. But honestly, the whole point of returning to linen is returning to practicality over appearance. Wrinkles mean you're wearing real fabric with real structure, not synthetic fibers engineered to maintain artificial smoothness. Every piece of linen clothing you purchase is bringing back what we've once lost. You're choosing fabric that doesn't require you to wash it after every single wear. The antimicrobial properties mean a linen shirt can be worn 2, 3, even 4 times before washing, depending on activity level. That's less water used, less energy consumed, less wear on the fabric. You're choosing material that will last long enough to become familiar, to become trusted, the way medieval people trusted their clothing. You're choosing to opt out of a system designed to keep you buying the same disposable items year after year. Medieval peasants lived hard lives and their options were limited. But in this one specific domain, textile production and use, they had it figured out. That knowledge base represented genuine wisdom, the kind that emerges from paying attention to results across generations. We traded that accumulated wisdom for convenience and low prices. The convenience is real. The low prices are real. But the cost hidden in that trade is becoming impossible to ignore. Our clothes fall apart. They smell bad quickly. They shed plastic into our water and our bodies. They don't regulate temperature effectively. They require constant replacement. And most people just accept this as normal because they've never experienced the alternative. The alternative still exists. Linen production never completely died. Small manufacturers in Europe kept the craft alive, kept the processing knowledge intact. The fabric is available. The skills are available. Medieval peasants made one decision: invest once, use for decades. We can do the same. As always, it's up to us.